Good, great evening to you. It's your girl, Keeley, psychotherapist with a passion for helping people to get clarity about the things that cause all of us confusion in life. It can be very difficult trying to make sense of it all by yourself. And this is one of the reasons I am an active encourager of people asking for help. You know, there's no shame in it. If you've been taught that, well, I believe it's good for you to overcome that, because it's not good for you. It's just not good for you, because there's only so far we can go by ourselves. Just of late, I'm really of the view that none of us are self-made. It really takes a village to do it all. No one is really truly self-made. We've all had mentors and people along our journey to assist us. So it's your girl, Keeley. I am a psychotherapist in private practice. People come to me for a whole manner of reasons. One of the areas that fascinates me is intimate relationship and how our stuff shows up in our relationships. But ultimately, I'm all about all things to do with the human condition, whatever it is. If you're trying to better yourself, if you're trying to lift yourself out of certain hardship, if you're trying to break certain cycles, if you want more for your life, yet you often feel drawn back to kind of just mediocrity or getting by, then your girl Key is here. So one of the things I'm talking about tonight is a recent interview I did on the BBC talking about reminiscing, and how actually we need to be quite mindful about reminiscing, because, well, if you're not mindful, we also know that it can have kind of feed into those qualities called depression and anxiety, common mental health problems. And one of the reasons why, and I promised my assistant I'm going to start to try to write down like little facts about what I talk about. One of the reasons why reminiscing isn't good for you is reminiscing takes us out of the here and now. When you reminisce and you go down memory lane, what often happens is we cherry pick the best bits. Let's use this give this some context. So let's talk about an intimate relationship, because you know I love them and it's the area where I'm particularly articulate. So one of the things about when we reminisce is that we often go back to one of the best times in our life. When we reminisce, we cherry pick the best bits. And you know what we do when we cherry pick the best bits? We edit out the worst parts. And this is one of the reasons why reminiscing can be so seductive. The second thing about reminiscing is it takes us out of the here and now, and it takes us to back then. Back then, when everything seemed so much better. Now take, for example, you sit and you reminisce about your childhood. We know when we reminisce, it has a very different glow about it. We see things very differently. So this is one of the challenges with reminiscing, is we go back to then, and it's another way of avoiding the present moment. For some of us, our lives might be very tricky in the now. As we all know, lockdown has had a whole raft of consequences for a whole raft of us, either personally, professionally, spiritually, culturally, and so on and so forth. So the beauty of reminiscing, like thinking about the good old days, like for example, when you could go out, is that those days begin to get an ultra glow about them. But the challenge is that it may mean it takes us into avoidance, being avoidance. So avoidance, it means we're not in the now. It may mean that there's difficult things for us to contend with right now. It may also mean that there aren't always easy solutions to some of the things that are going on in our lives right now. Therefore, what may happen is we start to reminisce. We go down memory lane. Things were so much better back then. But what we need to be mindful of, if you have a tendency to beat up on yourself and you go into the I should have done this, I would have done that, shoulda, woulda, couldas, mean it's highly likely you will be beating up on yourself. And I don't know about you, but as a psychotherapist, I pay very close attention to when my clients start beating up on themselves. I have to let them know, not here, not now, not today. I will not watch you abuse yourself. So this is one of the challenges with reminiscing, is it can take us back to the then and the there. It means we avoid the present moment, especially if there's challenges and difficulties in the now. And it may mean that we edit out the bad parts of the past, and what we do is we just focus on the best bits. But also, if you have a tendency to blame yourself, if, for example, a relationship or a job didn't go out the way you planned, it may fuel self-blame, self-criticism, not good enough. And you'll know if you're going into that space, because when people tend to beat up on themselves, shoulda, woulda, coulda often come into play. It's your girl, Keeley, qualified psychotherapist here at Key for Change's Head and Mind Quarters. If anything I'm saying has any relevance or touches you and you want to ask me a question, feel free to ask me right now. If you want to go live, please feel free to put a comment below. I'll happily take your questions if that works for you. So tonight I'm just talking about being aware of reminiscing. Is it good for you? I think for me, when I think about reminiscing, I endeavor to stay in the here and now. You can't stay in the here and now. I endeavor to be very conscious with myself about, I just try and check myself. First thing out is like, is there anything that I'm avoiding? And I think the reality is, if we think about the situation we all find ourselves in, you know, we may start having a tendency to go backwards, to start to think about the good old days when we could go to, I know, a nightclub, meet people, you know, and that will have a really lovely glow about it. That's no problem. But if you have a tendency to look back and always find fault with yourself, this is especially true if you're highly empathic and you don't know how to protect yourself as a highly empathic person, then sometimes, for example, say if things didn't go right, if there was a situation, for example, a breakup, an unhealthy breakup, or, you know, relationships, and this isn't just about intimate relationships, family relationships, things went pear-shaped. Be careful, because if reminiscing evokes regret, then, as we know, you're highly likely to start beating up on yourself. Regret often does that. I wish I coulda, I would have done this, and I woulda, coulda, and I would have done that. If there's anything that I'm saying that is of benefit to you, that speaks to you, you could feel free to inbox me, because as you may or may not know, I help people with all manner of challenges that come up for them. So I think if you are someone who tends to reminisce, my question to you is you need to ask yourself, is it helpful to you? Because the challenge is with reminiscing, there is nothing you can do about certain things that have happened in our past. There's nothing you can do about it. If reminiscing feeds you into self-loathing, where you beat up on yourself, you put yourself down, you should have done this and you should have done that, then you have to be particularly mindful. Keeley Taverner, did I not tell you to have water with you every time you do it live? Yes, I did. And you don't listen. Now I'm going to dry up, so I'm going to keep it short. Like I said to you, reminiscing means that we jump out of the now. And we know that now there are lots of difficult things going on for us. And so you have to be conscious. But if you're someone who struggles with depression, if you struggle with loving yourself, be mindful. Because if the regret kicks off, if you start to beat up on yourself with, you should have done this and I should have done that, then reminiscing can be unhelpful, and you need to be thinking about getting back in the here and now, the present moment. Because, as I often tell people, reminiscing is time travel. Ooh, yes, it means you're in 2020, but your mind is back in the 80s. Big up Brian Shepherd, the exercise king. Love your 80s music. I'm just thinking about, you know, reminiscing and when I've done some of your classes and how it really takes me back to a time when I was young and carefree. And we know this is a fine example of that 80s classics. I remember when you were talking about doing your classes, and some of these songs were the songs that were inspired by your mum, Brian. So, you know, that's another example of how time traveling, reminiscing, takes us back to some of our fond memories. And there's nothing wrong with that. The only challenge is if you start to kick into regret and beating up on you. The challenge is when you start beating up on yourself, when you're isolated. This is one of the reasons how the depression and the ill feeling and not feeling good enough happens, is you're not around anyone to challenge you. Which is why, as a psychotherapist, when I get the sense that a client is beating up on themselves, when there's usually words like shoulda, woulda, coulda, we have to have a word about that, because beating up on yourself isn't helpful. And yes, there may have been things that you wish you may have done differently. So the question is, if you reminisce and you look back and you think, I wish I never did this, or I wish I never did that, the key is to understand, what lessons do I need to learn from that experience? What are the life lessons? Life lessons mean you go from an adverse situation, and then you get curious. You get curious about, what did I do in those situations? What do I need to learn from? Did I let myself down? In what ways did you let yourself down? Mrs. Pink, my #1 follower, I am so glad you're here. Tonight we're talking about reminiscing, and is it good for you? I'm here to tell people that actually there's no problem with it. The other day I was out at the shops and I saw that they brought back the old school Space Raiders. You know, and if you know, like, I also bought a pair of Fila in the summer because there's something nostalgic about that. It reminded me of my youth. In addition, back in the day, I never ever had a pair of Fila. I never had the high top ones anyway. I had a little dodgy one. And so it was quite nice to be able to buy that as an adult. And it's become a little talking point with people where they're like, oh my God, you got old school Fila on. So in that sense, it's harmless. However, if you go time traveling, if you reminisce, and it becomes an opportunity for you to say, I should have done this and I should have done that, you're going to, and this is one of the things I help people to make sense of. As a psychotherapist, I believe I help people to make sense of their decisions. Because by the time they come to therapy, often people are beating up on themselves, and I should have done this, I should have done that. Well, actually, usually I find there's always a reasonable explanation for the behavior. So whatever you've done, you know, open up, talk, let me help you to make sense of it. And for every poor choice we have, I often find there's a reasonable explanation. It's your girl, Keeley, psychotherapist, here at Key for Change in West London. People come in the flesh to see me here to get clarity about their life, their situations, their stuckness, why it happens, why they go around in vicious cycles, and most importantly, what they need to do about it. Yes, and some of those conversations are difficult, and some of the solutions, some of the way forward to our situations are not easy. Some of us are not ready for that, and that's absolutely okay. However, it's best that you're clear about what your situation is, the way forward. For some of us, we don't like the way forward. The way forward is inconvenient because we want things to work out the way we want them to work out. That's called your ego. And the longer you live in your ego, you're going to get very stubborn about situations and ways to move forward because you want things on your terms. Life does not work like that. And personally, as someone who has, worked on themselves for a number of years, the more I can endeavor to detach from my ego, is the more beneficial my life has been. It doesn't mean that I have always liked the answers that life has thrown at me. Sometimes I've wanted things on my terms and it's not worked out that way. It's your girl, Keeley, psychotherapist, here at Key for Change. I'm taking any questions, comments that you may have. Here we go. We've got Shah Pink in the place. Adam Yusuf Ali. Big up to yourself, Miss Belinda. How are you doing? Thanks for this. You are most welcome. Like I said to you, my people, reminiscing, it's a beautiful thing, but you gotta watch out for it, because if it gets out of hand, it may mean it feeds into regret. Regret starts to feed into self-loathing. And the reality is, if you start to regret what you did in the past, unless you got a DeLorean and your name is Michael J. Fox and you're going to go and find Biff and all of that stuff, big up to my 80s peoples, then it's absolutely becomes pointless. Unless the point is that you want to depress and make yourself depressed. Because if you start to beat up on yourself, I should have done that, you cannot change it. The key is to learn the life lesson from it. What do I need to learn from this adversity? It's your girl Key. I reminisce through music, often places, people, moments, feelings. Well, music is definitely something that enables you to time travel. As far as I'm concerned, I often view reminiscing as a form of time travel, where we go back, we edit out the bad stuff. And some of us, and I often do this, big up to anyone who's worked with me, sometimes, you know what, there may have been red flags and we ignored them because some of the red flags we saw were inconvenient. Give me a heart, give me a like if you know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of us ignored the red flags because we had an ambition to do X, Y, Z. And when we saw inconvenient signs that alerted us to a potential problem, what do? We went full steam ahead. Or we hoped, wished, prayed that it would be okay and it would sort itself out. Sometimes we set ourselves up for more problems. I'm not here to judge that. We've all been there. The reality is, if you are in a situation, in fact, if you feel desperate, if you feel lost, if you are filled with despair, the key is, what do you need to learn from those situations? What do you need to learn? Often one of the most toughest life lessons we have to learn is the importance of letting go and self-forgiveness. For lots of us, we will abundantly forgive others at the drop of a hat, yet we can be brutal, unkind and scathing with ourselves. Why do we do it? Why do we do it? Well, some of that may be about your self-esteem. Some of that might be about how others have treated you. And so if others put you down, if you grew up in a family or an environment where you put down, I think it's only natural that you inherit some of that. However, by the time you get to the point where you're depressed or mental health problems are starting to engulf you, and the dreams, the hopes and the ambitions you have for your life, because I know all of us want more for our lives. So many of us get blocked. Getting blocked is not a problem. The challenge is, what do we do when we're stuck? For many of us, pride, shame has us gripped. So we go mute, or we try and solve things by ourselves. Come on, my people. I know I'm not alone out here. Going mute and going all by yourself is just not helpful for you. It is a victory for you to begin to say, you know what? I need help. Inbox me if that speaks to you, if it speaks to a friend, if you're watching a friend go through something and they need help, why not share the video with them? Shah Pink, I used to ask people, am I Olivia Pope, the fixer? Easy. I'm not familiar with Olivia Pope, but I appreciate the analogy even though I don't get the analogy, because it's most definitely, we have to become very, very conscious. Like I said to you, one of the ways that actually, if I think about it, at a deeper level, good evening, Shazberry, one of the ways that people get depressed is often because of time travel. They're either reminiscing about the past or they're concerned about the future. Remember, when you reminisce, you miss the now. All you have is the now. It's one of the reasons why, as a psychotherapist and a coach, I help people to make decisions now. I'll be encouraging you to just be like, you know what? Why don't you just take the phone out and do it now? For many of us, we get caught up in our head. We have a fear-based story and we get into stuckness. How do we get stuck? Often because we don't take action. We overthink things, and then we come up with 101 hypotheses about how it could go. If I did X, then that, like, look, that's a hypothesis. The only way you will ever know if you take one action, if that will happen, is you have to take the action. Action takes you out of your thinking mind. Action is the key to change. Shar Pink, a series called Scandal. Check it out if you can. It stars Kerry Washington. I'm always up for a recommendation for television. I don't know if you may or may not know, but in the main, I don't tend to watch television, mainstream television. I don't find it helpful for my optimism. And the position that I am in means I need to be robust in order to support the people and the vision that is key for change. So I'm very much very conscious about what I allow into my ears and my eyes, because a lot of this stuff has an impact on us, and it shapes our thinking, it shapes our belief. And with so much fear going around, I don't know who watches the news right now, but we know that there's so much fear and feeling scared and frightened. It's just not good for the human organism, you know. And so I believe you need to be your own best friend. You need to be conscious of what you allow into your mind. You have to be the gatekeeper of your mind, because if you allow yourself to be bombarded with this kind of media that is not helpful for you, it's one of the reasons why I believe there is literally an epidemic of depression, anxiety, and the common mental health problems. It's your girl Key, going live tonight. If you want to ask any questions about reminiscing and why you go back and think that everything was better back then. Now, come on, we know we're in the pandemic business or whatever it is, but that's something to be really mindful of, because it can also feed your mental health, sadness, problem. Forget the word mental health. It will also stop you from living your best life. Let's be having it. It stops you from living your best life because you get stuck. In addition, if you find, for example, let's be honest, ladies, some of us, it takes us years to get over someone we've loved. Some of us, it takes us a long time to be able to detach. So we may have finished, for example, in an intimate relationship. However, there may still be that attachment, the emotional attachment. The emotional attachment, ladies, just so you know, and you are normal, can take years to sever. Don't let nobody make you feel inadequate because you may still have a soft spot for someone who touched your soft spot way back in the 90s. We are human beings, and your emotional self does not have any regard for your cognitive thinking mind. The emotional self runs on a whole different frequency. The better you learn to understand that, is the hopefully that you can be more understanding of your emotional states. However, just because we may well have feelings for people we love, we care for them, it doesn't necessarily mean we need to have them in our life. As Bette Midler told us, you know, from a distance. Remember that song? If you know about the song From a Distance, Bette Midler, let your girl Key know. Some of us need to love people from a distance. Some of us don't understand that. Some of us believe because we love and we care for people that they should be under our nose and we should have them in our life every day. No. Some people we need to love from afar and we need to still keep them blocked. Let's keep it real. Some people just ain't great for our greatness, and some people will hold us back. It's not their fault. It just is what it is. Thank you for the heart. If you know about loving from a distance, you can inbox your girl Key, because you have to learn to be your own best friend. Some people ain't good for our well-being, and some of us go into long-winded explanations with people trying to explain XYZ. Some people are not worthy of the explanation. Some people are just unnecessarily difficult. Even if you explained it to them, some people won't get it. And it's for you to be able to look after yourself. One of the massive challenges with reminiscing, if you tend to find that it makes you depressed, is you need to learn how to detach from your thinking mind. Now, if that speaks to you, Detaching from your thinking mind, this touches on things like mindfulness. Big up the people who've been prescribed doing a little bit of mindfulness. It's where you learn to observe your thoughts rather than identify with them. When you identify with your thoughts, you almost believe yourself. Now, I can tell you that you aren't in control of the thoughts in your mind. For example, if I said to you, think of a white rabbit with a pink hat on, it's highly likely that some of you would have had an image with a white rabbit with a pink hat on. This is just an example of how we are not in control of our minds. Our minds are often, can just be reactive. This is one of the benefits of learning to observe your thoughts rather than identify with your thoughts. This can be very difficult. What happens when people reminisce, if you reminisce and then you end up feeling down because the person who you thought would have changed your life is no longer in your life, I think the reality is you're often being seduced by your own mind. You need to think, remember this when you're reminiscing, my people. When you do this, holler at your girl Key, because I need the love. It's lonely out here on my own. You know what I'm saying? When you're reminiscing, you are cherry picking the best bits. You edit out the bad bits, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. We edit out the bad bits. The additional issue with reminiscing, and I believe this is how I see it manifest in things like depression, regret, sadness, anxiety as well, is that you are either in the past. As well, when you reminisce, you may also project into the future. So you think, well, if that person, so you go back to the 80s when everything was wonderful, and then you project into the future. So if that person was with me now, my life would be so much better. If that person was in my life right now, I would be complete. For many of us, we have been fed a myth about intimate relationships. Many of us are of the view, because of conditioning through Walt Disney and programs, that you should meet someone and that one should complete you. This is why people are always searching for the one. Come on, ladies, when we meet someone and we like them, and we get a little bit excited about them, we're always saying to ourselves, is this the one? Is this the one? Is this the one? And that kind of pressure on this relationship can often be unhelpful. And it means that what results is that we expect that person to complete us. We expect that person to make us happy. And ultimately, we stop taking responsibility for our own happiness. I'm here to tell you the inconvenient truths. You are responsible for your own happiness. I'm sorry to tell you this. But enough of you ain't gonna listen anyway. You're still gonna go on the manhunt for this person who you think is the one. Often what happens when you go on the manhunt thinking somebody else is gonna be the one and your life will be complete, and that will be that, is you lead yourself into a whole range and raft of problems. Because we all know when the relationship bubble bursts, we come back down to reality with a bump. And this is one of the reasons why you need to maintain your relationships with your friends. Because back in the past, I had a habit of letting go of my friends when I thought I meant the one. The one turned out to be another bum. Then we have to go and pick up the phone and call Jane, Judette and Jimmy. But they are now annoyed with us because they felt neglected and used by us when we found Bob. Now, if you know what I'm talking about, give your girl Key a heart and a like. This is the reality of the situations. And the more you get stuck thinking that a relationship should have saved you and given you the utopia, the perfect life that you have been fed through Walt Disney, is the more sad you will become when relationships hit the buffers. It's your girl Keeley Taverner. Wise words, my darling. Thank you. Andy Lip, most appreciated. Thank you very much. One of the things I've learned about doing lives is to not look at numbers. I've learned I do read the comments because obviously I need to respond, but sometimes I just need to wax lyrical. And obviously I know over the years that things I say touch people when people come and see me, and sometimes they quote what I may have said to them. So I give thanks for that. Thank you very much. Vicky Barnett, absolutely agree. From a distance, Sister Vicky, we need to love them from a distance. Yes, most definitely. For many of us, we can often be the victim of our own feelings, and sometimes love is just not enough. This is not fairy tales. This is real life. And we need to keep it real, because the more fakeness is, the more people are having high expectations that do not manifest into reality. And so when reality hits them hard, it's very difficult. This is one of the reasons why people can be so depressed, especially when intimate relationships fail, because there was such a heavy expectation that it would deliver. I would be happy. I would be complete because I met the one. I'm all about companionship. Don't get it wrong. Everyone likes a nice chest to lie upon, someone to share, to build and grow with. However, we have to be mindful that we don't lose ourselves. Anytime you lose yourself, that's a problem. Be mindful. Sustain your own identity. Too many of us throw everything in the basket, and we put all our expectations on the relationships to deliver. This is just one of the reasons why I encourage my clients to do my bucket list, so that you sustain your own identity, your own interests, your own hobbies, because so many of us put this unrealistic expectation on intimate relationships. It's your girl Key. We're talking reminiscing. Is it good for you? Yes, it is good for you, but yes, it can be bad for you. The reality is you have to be mindful of what it does to you. If it leads you into regret, if it leaves you beating up on yourself because you should have done this and you should have done that, then it will rob you of the now. That's the issue with reminiscing. It robs you of the moment. And if you know anything about life, the moment is all you have. But for many of us, we second guess, we don't take action, and we overthink things. We overthink because we don't take action. Action is key to change. Many people have wanted to work with me for years, let's be honest, but they didn't take the action until they got to the point where they were like, boom, I'm ready. And I'm cool with that. I get it. I trust the process. But remember, my people, you have to be mindful. Reminiscing is a beautiful thing, but be careful if it robs you of the now. Because some of us, there's things we need to be doing right now, but they're difficult. Or you can't see the solution. You can't see how life will look like when you do X, Y, Z. So what do? We don't do anything. And I know enough about when we don't face our problems, well, the reality is they're only going to get worse. Let's be real. And if you want to explore some of that, there's a very seminal book in the psychotherapeutic world called The Road Less Traveled. Google it, buy it, let me know your thoughts. But if you avoid your problems, then it's only right and natural that they will get worse. So what you inevitably get, and a lot of us do this in our relationships with family, intimate relationships and so on, is when we avoid the problems, what you get is short-term gain, long-term pain. But I also believe in conjunction with that, there's no judgment, we're just pondering. Well, I'm just free-flowing anyway. Sometimes we have to be in sufficient pain for us to take action. Sometimes it's got to hurt enough. If you're anybody, and I often talk about the pebble in the shoe, sometimes you can handle a little pebble in the shoe, it goes in the crevices, you can keep on walking. But some of us, it has to hurt the bunion, yeah, for us to take the shoe off and knock the pebble out. And that's life sometimes. Sometimes we won't take action until we're in desperate pain. And don't fret, don't worry, your girl Key understands it, and I get it, because I've studied the human condition for many, many years, and I am blessed and grateful that people allow me to assist in understanding their world. I help people to make sense of what they're going through, so they go from being confused to be like, that's why I do that. Helping them to understand where that comes from, so that they can tap into and begin to rebuild themselves, truly begin to love themselves, truly begin to practice self-care. Now, for some of us, we're of the view that self-care is doing our nails and get our eyebrows arched. I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about self-care. Sometimes is about picking up the phone and saying we need to block people. Sometimes, remember, we need to block for our own well-being. Sometimes we need to have a little social media clear out. Sometimes we need to deactivate certain apps on our phones. Some of them aren't good for us. It promotes it. I know when I had the Amazon app on my phone, listen, I was buying a book all the time. And what I realized is it was the convenience. The convenience became an inconvenience. And you've got to watch that in this world that we're in, you know, in this capitalist society. We often get these mixed messages. Like, I was driving down Wembley High Road the other day, got to the triangle, and it seems that they've removed a lane in order for people to ride bicycles. Cool. Yeah, but on the same hand, you'll go and watch television and they're encouraging everybody to buy cars with 0% interest. Mixed messages all the time. And so you have to kind of learn to have your capacity to be able to see through the nonsense. If we can't see through the nonsense and the hypocrisy and the lies, and I don't want to get too political because it's serious times, I prefer to do that on a one-to-one because you know the people them is watching. But it's something to be really mindful about, the mixed messages. And I think, for example, intimate relationships is an incredible area where we have these unrealistic expectations that don't come to fruition. And when they don't, it can lead to regret, sadness, disappointment. But half the challenge is we've been set up for failure because we have an unrealistic expectation of what intimate relationships are truly like. And we regret and we don't take responsibility for our own well-being and happiness. It's your girl Key. I am a psychotherapist. In private practice, people come to see your girl Key for all manner of reasons, psychologically focused, all things mind, all things about, if you sell yourself short, if you aren't your own best friend, if you play small, if you don't speak yourself up and you're tired of seeing other people get opportunities that you know in your heart are for you, talk to your girl Key. I didn't get from IKEA's checkout. Excuse me, can you leave the yellow bag behind, please? It's £1.25 for a blue one. Big up the IKEA massive. I didn't get here by wishing and hoping. It's been slow and steady progress for your girl Keeley Taverner. And now I am in the privileged position where my sacrifices of yesteryear are yielding fruit for me in the now. How did I get here? Because I took action in the now. If you're someone who keeps time traveling, going back to the past where everything seems like it was wonderful when it had a lovely glow on it, we need to learn how to be our own best friend. Come to the now. The now is all you have. What seed can you sow in the now? I'm an ideas person, often getting people to think about what can you do right now. And let's be honest, some of us are in some hard-ass situations and you need hand-holding, or you need somebody's ear for a little bit of advice. You need to run something by somebody, and that's okay. That's okay. It's one of the reasons why I'm here. I help people to go from what the hell is happening in my life to, okay then. Oh wow, is that where that's coming from? We're about aha moments. It's your girl, Keeley Taverner, psychotherapist. It is now coming up to 9:25, and believe it or not, this is quite an early night for me. I do wish you all the best. If anything I've said has resonated with you, if you're considering working with me, do consider my Pain into Purpose course, which is coming up in November. We have a payday deal going on right now. Do check the link. If you have any questions, if something I said has touched you, why not have a call with me? Run your issue by me and I'll put my mind around it and see what's going on for you. So do take care of yourself, because remember, if you don't, no one is coming to save you. We have to learn to be our own best friend. If we don't learn to be our own best friend, people will take liberties and they will violate you. This is one of the reasons why so many of us are now becoming sad. We don't learn how to put ourselves first. Sometimes the reason we don't put ourselves first is because our little ego doesn't want things to go the way they are going. And so we try to take over and we try to do things on our terms. Some of us need to learn how to surrender. Some of us need to accept situations as they are, not as we want them to be. That speaks to you inbox your girl Key. Take care of you, because if you don't, who will?